It's very easy to get burnt out very quickly, and there are ways to avoid doing that by like knowing your roadblocks ahead of time and not rushing in here without a good game plan to know what kind of challenges you're likely to face.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The one thing about real estate investing, unlike most other businesses, is we are leverage, we are funding heavy. Almost everything we do, there's money involved, from buying rentals and holding rentals to doing flips to dividing land. We need money and other people's money to do that.
So what's the first one? What's the first roadblock?
The first roadblock is probably just not understanding your cash flow, not knowing your numbers. People go to classes, they go to these different things, and they get so hyped up about creating that generational wealth. And I say it's very easy in 3 years. It's just hard in 3 months to create generational wealth. It is, and I think a lot of people get so emotionally tied that they're going to do this that they don't go through and understand their numbers. This week we had a person who was like, I did not understand how, the escrows work, and that I needed to have money up front to start the construction process, and then my lender would give me money after everything was done. So there's some money that comes out of their pocket to start a project. A lot of people aren't aware of that. Even simple things like, what is it going to cost me monthly in interest to keep this going? You have a $400,000 loan out and you're at 12% because a lot of the large companies are there now at 12%. That's $4,000 a month that comes out of your pocket that you're going to have to pay. And people may think that, hey, we're going to be in and out in 2 months and it'll be fine. And then it drags out to 6 to 8. There's no contingencies there. So what happens when you don't have the money to make your payment, to pay for your contractor? All those things create so much stress. And then people just start doing anything and everything they can to come up with money from family and friends. So planning up front, making sure you understand all your numbers and your budget is critical. Making sure you understand your settlement statement, which you have to bring into.
Your what? Sorry?
Your settlement statement. Like when you buy a property,
okay.
The title company is going to give you this grid and it says, here's what you're buying, here's what you owe everyone from title to insurance to your lender to the other person you're buying a property from, and it adds them all up. A lot of investors seem like they piecemeal, like, hey, I know my insurance is like $1,500. I know my lender's like 2 points, and I know title's going to be about $2,000, and maybe there's some other HOA fees and all these other stuff. But when they put it together, they don't realize, hey, I have to bring in $20,000. So what happens is people don't understand their numbers and then they get into a crunch. When you don't have enough money to make your payments, it puts you into a place of just pure panic and desperation, and you start using credit cards and personal credit cards and HELOCs. You put your whole life into jeopardy by just not understanding everything that goes into a project. People make a lot of money at this. There's a lot of money to be made, but you have to go by the numbers. Take out some of the emotions. You got to have some emotions to drive the business, but just taking out some of that to make sure you understand everything that's involved in it and that can go wrong and that comes out of your pocket.
Yeah, I can imagine like myself going to, or my wife and I going to a conference or something, getting hyped up about it. And I think often the selling point of those is how much generational wealth you could build relatively quickly. But of course, that's going to be their main focus. And so, when it comes down to doing the, looking at the cash flow, like analogous to personal budgeting, right? It always adds up. I'm like, What? We're spending how much? Like, I didn't even think we were spending that much, Sounds like the same thing could easily happen with your business. And if you don't do the hard work of just making sure all those numbers, you know what's coming in, how much you have to pay in terms of interest, contractors, all these different costs you mentioned. Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to layer the risk and the stress, because you run out of money and then you have to go to your significant other and say, hey, I'm going to use the credit cards to pay my contractor, or I need to get a HELOC on our house. And they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is our house.
That would not go down well in our house.
So yeah, exactly. So just understanding and knowing your numbers and not being, you talked about generational wealth. You can make it easily in 3 years. You just have to build and get there, because creating millions in 3 years is pretty good, but it's pretty hard in a few months.
Yeah, that's amazing. That reminds me of I think I heard a saying, I don't know who said it, but like it's people tend to overestimate what they can do in a few months and tend to underestimate what they can do in a few years.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I've heard that too.
So, so that's the first block is cash flow. Okay.
Cash flow, understanding how much you have to bring to closing, how much it's going to cost during the process. And then, then after you sell it, is that money going to be just use to live off, or are you going to be able to put it into the next project so you have more money? Are you actually building each time you do a flip or create a rental? Is it bringing more money into your life and your company? Or as soon as you get that check, you've spent it because you owe the credit card companies and all those other things. So you got to make sure there's some money left over to keep building your business too.
Yeah, actually, yeah. So don't just,
you're busy.
not just make sure everything's covered, but also have some money left over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why you're in this stuff. To make a little bit of money.
Yeah, 100%.